This Fox News alert now. For nearly an hour, President Trump has been speaking at the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. He unfurled raw truth to countries in attendance there and to the rest of the world. And moments from now, the president is set to hold a meeting with the UN Secretary General. And that meeting will follow that long speech that put quite the spotlight on the different world order we are living in now. He even called the former President Joe Biden by name, comparing where the world was under Biden and while Biden was leading the United States and where we are now. The president talked in detail about his own foreign policy victories, the successful containment of illegal immigration into the United States, and he had a warning, too, for other countries with all those open borders. And, of course, he talked about the ongoing wars with Israel versus Hamas and Ukraine versus Russia. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. From moments ago, here's the president.
6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged on 2 continents. An era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. America is respected again like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world.
Steve Yates, former Deputy National Security Advisor for Vice President Dick Cheney and Heritage Foundation Vice President now. Great to see you today. Thank you for being with me. First of all, I'm thinking you must have watched the entire speech. It was a little bit more than an hour. What were just a couple of highlights that you think the world is paying attention to President Trump at this moment?
Well, there's a few things, Harris, that are sort of process. There was apparently a teleprompter malfunction, and if there ever was a world leader that's not going to be dissuaded by a teleprompter malfunction, it's President Trump. He knows very much what he wants to say, and he's able to, on the fly, continue with his messaging, and he was characteristically very direct, is the most comfortable leader ever in uncomfortable situations. So he would speak blunt truth, but with power. And what a difference 8 years makes from when he entered the world scene and kind of ushered in the end of globalism, and people laughed at him. Now the World Trade Organization has failed world trade. The World Health Organization has failed world health. The UN Security Council has failed to preserve peace and promote prosperity. And he's presenting now with experience, the most active 7 months ever in a presidency on foreign affairs, an alternative to the globalist view.
What would you say about, I mean, he was really, really sticking it to those leaders in the room and around the world with all those open borders, particularly those in Western Europe. What would you say about him talking on that topic? Do they get what he's saying? It's going to cost them if they continue their behavior.
Well, they should get what he's saying, because it's not really about President Trump. It's about basic hard truths. If you look at one of the controversies of recent weeks, it's the number of our allies that have decided to recognize a non-existent state of Palestine. Well, a lot of the driver between that, in that issue, is the migration into those capitals that have very forceful mobs that are pushing this activist agenda, and it's causing these leaders to take this position that won't feed a single Gazan, won't make peace closer. It's so the immigration issue is shaping world politics in those capitals, and President Trump is as direct about it there as he has been at home, and it's true.
Well, I want to talk now about President Trump and what he had to say, his points on his second-term foreign policy achievements. Let's watch.
In a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal.
Your reaction?
Well, leave aside whether the wars are all over. That's the constant gardening required of world leaders. It's an absolute indictment of the United Nations that they have been absent from the reality and even the conversation about bringing peace in Ukraine, peace in Israel, trying to avoid a conflict in East Asia. Essentially, the UN has lost its purpose. They're celebrating 80 years and saying better together, but really it's 80 years of missing their mission. And so I thought President Trump's direct remarks were spot on in that regard.
You know, I want to touch just now real quickly, because I'd ask you about, it wasn't a lecture, but he was definitely telling countries, look, you've got to stop it with the open borders. And then he took on the United Nations on how much money they're helping or spending on people helping get across our border. Let's watch that.
The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well.
Your quick reaction to that.
Well, it's absolutely true that there are UN-affiliated organizations that enabled a lot of this mass migration, but they also have been very permissive about money laundering and the movement of illicit chemicals. The fentanyl pandemic in the United States is directly tied to a lot of these kinds of movements. Took my daughter and 500,000 other sweet children out of our country. So the UN definitely has blood on its hands with its approach to these issues. And the president's right to encourage all countries to put their citizens first, their sovereignty first, and if they do that, they've got a good partner in the United States in moving forward in a positive direction towards peace and prosperity.
Steve, I don't want to run over what you said, and I think I heard it correctly. My prayers for you and your family. I did not know about your daughter.
Thank you very much, Harris. And I highlight her because I love her and honor her. Yeah. But truly, 500,000 Americans is not a small number. And where has the United Nations or any of our allies really been in trying to cooperate to end the scourge?
Indeed. Steve Yates, thank you for being on The Focus. Good to see you.
Thank you.
The bilateral meeting there between President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine, and the headline coming out of that, when he was asked whether NATO nations should shoot down Russian aircraft that make an incursion into their airspace, he said yes, and that depending on the circumstances, the United States might back it up. That would be an indication that his patience with Vladimir Putin really is wearing thin.
Yeah, let's get reaction from Fox News contributor and former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman back with us. Dan, your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, I think we should all recall that back in 2015, Russian fighter jets entered Turkish airspace. They were warned to leave, and Turkey, they used their F-16s to strike at Russian aircraft, and they downed one of Russia's fighter aircraft. And so that was the message that Turkey delivered. Now, when the president says that we would do this, that's a clear statement of policy. So Vladimir Putin might test us, and we would need to respond accordingly. I'm hopeful that there are a lot of back-channel discussions right now going on between the United States and Russian militaries that we're warning the Russians that if they do this, that if they send their fighter aircraft into NATO airspace and that they don't leave when we ask them to leave, that they're risking being attacked. And so this is going to get pretty dicey if indeed Putin thinks he can continue to do this.
And what did you make of the quote, good news on the battlefield that Zelensky was talking about there?
Yeah, look, Ukraine is bravely carrying on the fight. And if you just look at the map, if you ask General Keane, he'll tell you that Russia's taken just a teeny tiny patch of Ukrainian territory and suffered over 1 million casualties in doing so. So, look, Putin has failed to achieve his strategic objective. He's feeling the pain. He's on his knees begging his long-term strategic rivals, China, Iran, North Korea, for help. How about that for the four horsemen, those countries working together as this century's axis of tyranny? But that's what we've got, and it's not a good look for Russia. President Trump is absolutely right about that, but Putin, I think, still feels like he's got to carry on fighting this war. He launched it because he could never allow Ukraine to have commercial, military and diplomatic relations with the West, that Ukraine would pursue a vibrant democracy. That would be a bad look for Russia, with a Russian-speaking majority population on their border, living so much better than Putin's own Russian population.
Well, that cast of characters on horseback may spell some sort of apocalypse. Not sure for who, though. Dan, thank you.
All right, Dan, thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
President Trump roasting the globalists at the UN during the General Assembly after he and Melania were forced to climb a broken escalator that conveniently shut down as they stepped on it, and then deliver his remarks off a busted teleprompter.
The teleprompter is not working. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. The UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know? They actually said during the campaign, they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything.
We don't deserve him. But talk about an escalation. Carolyn Levitt highlighting a Telegraph article from Sunday, saying UN staffers were joking about how they may turn off the escalators to mark Trump's arrival. You know, Jesse, you're the person I go to when I want to know what's behind the story, what's going on with the escalator. What do you think?
Yeah, they sabotaged them.
Yeah.
And they could have hurt the First Lady.
Yeah.
Trump would have fallen and he would have gotten back up. But, you know,
they would have blamed it on his rhetoric.
And then they sabotaged the teleprompter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an insurrection. And what we need to do is either leave the UN or we need to bomb it. It is in New York, though, right?
Yeah,
there could be some fallout there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Maybe gas it?
No.
Let's not do that.
Don't gas it. Okay.
He's
But we
kidding,
need to
he's
destroy
kidding.
it. Maybe just, can we demolish the building?
We could turn it
Have
into-
everybody leave and then we'll demolish the building?
We could turn it into affordable housing.
Okay.
That's what you do, affordable housing.
No, I don't like that. I like nice sky rises, Dana, the expensive condominiums. You
trying to
see
win an
the
election
East
here.
River from there. No, this is absolutely unacceptable, and I hope they get to the bottom of it, and I hope they really injure emotionally the people that did it. It is good, though, that he's saying that we have a MAGA model for the world. You basically have to get off the green stuff because it doesn't work. You have to stop fighting each other because it sends migrants all into Western Europe. And then you just have to make money, not make war on each other. It's common sense. It's worked here. It can work everywhere else. And the most important thing, he tweeted. He said Zelensky can win this thing. If we just send him more money and the Europeans stop buying Russian oil, not only can he win it, he can go take all the land back that Russia's grabbed. This is a huge break from what he's been saying. He must be so pissed at Putin to say this. Now, the ball's in Putin's court. We'll see what Putin says.
All right, Harold, you said you had some very critical things to say, and I want to
No, I just like to call balls and strikes. I think you're right, Jesse.
Never heard that before.
I think you're right, Jesse, about the president in this Ukraine. You think about this. In February, late February of this year, the president met with Mr. Zelensky in the White House. We all remember that meeting. It didn't go well. There were harsh words said back and forth. Even Vice President Vance got in the mix there. A few weeks later, Zelensky tried his hardest through European partners to say he didn't mean that. He was sorry. He wants to get off on a better foot. Then in August, mid-August, our president hosted President Putin in Alaska. The president said it was a good meeting. Here we are now, and I would have thought today, I was hoping for something different from the president before the UN. I was hoping he would have made his speech about what you just said, how he's changed his mind on this and what this means for the world. I would have hoped that he would have talked about how he was able to get our NATO allies to increase their spending on defense, which will help us and help them as we try to create borders that will be respected and adhered to. I would have thought he would have bragged about his resetting of tariffs and said the world needs to understand that America is not going to be ripped off, and this is why I've done this. Some of you may disagree, but here's why we're doing this and why we're stronger. I would have thought we would have talked about how we're exporting AI and innovation and ingenuity, as he did in the Middle East, and talked about how that was critical and important, not only for America and for our allies, but for us to even be able to counter China. And then finally, he criticized the UN. This UN is certainly deserving of criticism. But Mr. President, you are the president. Why not spell out a set of reforms for the UN? Why not give them something to strive towards? I just thought it was really a missed opportunity on behalf of the president, who I thought, after listening to what he said just a few hours ago, Jesse, this was the moment, this was the forum, and this was the lectern to share with the world how and why his position has changed on Russia and Putin and this war, and why he now believes, which he said in that Truth Social tweet, or tweet, I don't know what you call it, but he said on Truth Social, that he now believes that Ukraine can take back the land that Russia had taken from them, which I thought was a powerful, to your point, statement.
All right. Whew, that was a lot. Dana.
You want me to permission?
No. You and I both loved hearing him call the climate stuff the greatest con job. We know this. We know it's a fact. It's the reason why no one is talking about it anymore. They realize that the grift is almost up. Mm-hmm. They're still giving money, but the hose has been cut off.
So it reminded me of, I think it was 2005. I was just a deputy press secretary sitting backbencher at a meeting where President Bush was talking to Angela Merkel of Germany. And he said, what are you thinking with this, setting up your country to be dependent on Russia for natural gas? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And at the time, she was in a pickle for her coalition because of the green energy stuff. And so what have we seen since then? What happened in Spain just a few weeks ago, right? They don't have enough load in order to power their country. And it went dark for about 12 hours. They had nothing, no internet, no phones, no nothing. And I loved that he said, this should end. And I'm sure there were a lot of people back home, not in the room, but back home listening in their country saying, yeah, like, first of all, when you talk about the windmills, they're made in China. I actually think that President Trump kind of gave China a pass today. Like he went after just about everybody else. I think China deserved a lot more from him. But when it comes to this, one of the reasons these guys loved Obama and Biden is that they could just let those countries walk all over America, say that America causes all of global warming, that America is the reason because of global warming that we have migration, and that you can't stop migration because of global warming because it's America's fault, and it went round and round and round. So I really like that. The other thing is, there's this whole piece this summer about how the Europeans don't have enough air conditioning. Yeah. And yet they're making fun of America because we don't have enough time off. It's like, well, look at the productivities of your country. Who is providing jobs? You've got almost a 30% unemployment rate for young people in Europe. And why do you think you have a falling birth rate? Who's going to get married if they're still living at home? So energy is the root of all of these things, and I love that he brought it up.
Yeah, Emily, I look at like Harold's criticisms, and for me, it's precise. Those are the great things about it, was that he told them what they needed to hear.
He didn't say any of this stuff.
No, what I'm saying is
this stuff. You like the stuff.
I like this. I like that he ignored all of your advice because he said things they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear. You guys suck. You guys got to do better. Look what I'm doing. Follow me or get out of this city.
Yeah,
I
Jesse,
say that to Harold.
Your wish actually came true today. The UN was rocked by a bomb, a truth bomb, because that's exactly what the president did the whole time. I agree with you. I thought he nailed every point so perfectly. The climate pact's a con job. We have diminished our output by 17%, our emissions. And meanwhile, since Paris, the rest of the world is up 6%. And it's all China and India. He's like, what is this all for? On foreign policy, reminding the entire globe that he has done more than any modern president, reduced extinguished 7 conflicts, and he talked about the unenforced 2,000 resolutions by the UN, highlighting that they are simply an impotent body. So he talked about that. They like to issue letters. So I do think that he articulated exactly what they need to do, which is stop doing nothing. Stop just paying lip service to what's happened. And I thought it was so profound when he pointed out that as he was the one that was in there with Israel and Hamas, no one from the UN called him.
Right.
Not one foreign leader called him to say, I offer my support. And they have the gall to condemn Israel over 154 times, more than every other country combined, including in the year that they were invaded by Hamas on October 7th. Yep. And the anti-Semitism, the hypocrisy about them enjoying $74 billion worth of oil from Russia every year and saying, oh, you want this conflict to stop? You guys fly your Ukraine flags outside of your front doors here and all over the country. Stop buying their oil. Look, I thought it was brilliant and most importantly, simple, that America brings strength and results. And the UN is an impotent body that just keeps funding the conflicts that it pretends to want to solve.
Impotent body.
Yeah.
The Ukraine and Russian war did not end on day one. The Israeli situation. Look, I'm for the president, but let's be honest. He couldn't brag about the thing he wanted to brag about most. And then he admitted after the speech that he now has a changed opinion on Russia. That was the news. That's the opportunity I think he missed.
Yeah, only 7 wars in 7 months being solved. What a loser. Really, Harold? You disgust me.
I'd take the other 2 over those 7 any day of the week.
Up next, a data dude reminds the Democrats why they suck.
Senior correspondent Eric Shawn is live outside the United Nations with a wrap of today's action, including a blunt and pointed speech by President Trump calling for the UN and countries around the world to step up. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, Brett. That it was. You know, the United Nations was founded to, quote, maintain international peace and security. And President Trump came here today to tell them it's not working.
It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
He was blunt and direct, chastising world leaders and the United Nations itself in a way that no U.S. president has ever done before. President Donald Trump telling international diplomats to their faces that they have failed to address a variety of global issues, from ending wars to illegal immigration.
The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them.
He called for abolishing biological weapons, vowed Iran will never build a nuclear bomb, and called for a ceasefire in Gaza, demanding Hamas release the remaining hostages, believed to be a total of 48, but only 20 who are still alive. And he slammed the General Assembly push demanding Palestinian statehood.
Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities.
On the Ukraine war, he criticized India and China and some European nations for helping fund it by continuing to purchase Russian oil.
Even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy.
Well, during his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the president said that NATO countries should shoot down Russian fighter jets that enter over their airspace. This after there was an incursion over Estonia. Estonia is a NATO member. Brett.
Eric Shawn, live outside the UN. Eric, thanks.
Joining us now, Chris Landau, for the first time since he's become a big muckety-muck as Deputy Secretary of State. He's in New York, where he's joining us from now. Mr. Deputy Secretary, it's great to see you tonight. The president posted on Truth Social today that Ukraine, with help from the EU, is in a position to win back all of its territory taken from Russia. He added, maybe even go further than that. Mr. Deputy Secretary, that's a big change from what Trump sounded like during the campaign. What's this all about?
You know, Laura, first of all, let me just say it's a real pleasure to be back on your show. It's great to see you. It's great to be here at the United Nations with the president. On the Ukraine front, I think the president has tried very hard since the first day he took office, even before he took office, to bring peace to the Ukraine-Russia war, as well as to all these other conflicts around the world. He rattled off all the wars that he has solved to date, and it's been really mind-blowing. On the Ukraine one, I think he really just has run out of patience with Russia. I mean, it's frustrating because I think there's a deal to be done there, and I think, you know, he made it clear that he wanted to see this war, which never would have happened if he'd been president, come to an end and to have a normal relationship with Russia. And I think he has tried to extend a hand of friendship. That hand has not been accepted by Russia. So I think he's saying, okay, you know, like, I'm kind of at the end of my rope here. That's the way I interpret this.
Well, we're going to get into this other issue later in the show, but there's a concern that all of the issues the president dealt with today, specifically the escalator, could be something, you know, more sinister. The UN is telling Fox that it was someone from the president's team running ahead of him that ended up stopping the escalator. I know this might seem trivial to people, but it didn't seem trivial to a lot of Americans watching this. Has the administration been given any official explanation as to why the escalator stopped when he stepped onto it?
You know, Laura, it's actually, I don't know what the cause is, but to me, it's such a wonderful metaphor. Both the escalator and then the teleprompter didn't work. I mean, it just shows the UN and all this other machinery that was put in place after World War II has just been operating on autopilot for a long time. And, you know, the president is finally, you know, the one to say the emperor has no clothes. I mean, he's the one that's been negotiating peace deals while the UN is nowhere to be found. And so I think it is symptomatic of the fact that the UN is a broken down process. And it's too bad, as the president said. I mean, the UN has a lot of potential. But the truth is, you know, this system that started with so much promise has kind of run out of gas. So, you know, I don't know what the cause was, but again, I think it is a very apt metaphor for what we're seeing here.
And another moment today, Kamala Harris was appearing on The View. And she discussed, and she was disgusted by what she had heard the president had said or was going to say at the United Nations. And I'm paraphrasing here, but do we have the soundbite? Yeah, we have it. Let's listen.
They laughed at him the last time he was in front of the UN.
Yeah, this time
you remember just about, I don't know, several weeks ago, that meeting with Xi and Kim Jong-un and Putin?
Yeah.
You think they're not laughing?
Oh, they are.
As they create a new axis of partnership?
Is that the sense you got? Kamala Harris, who was not there, said people were all laughing at him.
To the contrary, I think this was such an important speech, Laura, because President Trump says what he means and he means what he says, and people respect that. And I think people recognize this is not the speech of just, you know, telling people what they want to hear. That kind of diplomacy is for the birds. That kind of diplomacy is over, right? I mean, President Trump really threw down the gauntlet to the globalists and said, enough is enough. You guys with your open borders policies, with your Green New Deal fantasies, you have led the globalists have led the world to a point of crisis. I mean, the truth is, Laura, people know this. Even the globalists, they know this. You know, open borders is not going to last long around the world. I mean, you can see political movements rising up to challenge that because people, you know, want the sovereignty of deciding who comes into their own country. Nobody in any country is voting for open borders. People democratically have chosen to retain their own identity. President Trump, you know, is just reinforcing that message today that, you know, around, you know, here in the United States and in Europe, the kind of open borders, climate fantasy, you know, and, you know, lack of energy, common sense policies, I think are a thing of the past. And people are flocking to the United States for new economic deals, for opportunities. This is the way forward. And, you know, this is a challenge to the old order. It's not a surprise that, you know, some of the traditional politicians of the left are trashing the speech. This is a frontal challenge to their whole worldview.
Yeah, that old world order, OVER. Mr. Deputy Secretary, great to see you. Thanks so much.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is here. All right, Caroline, it does appear to be sabotage with the escalator and the teleprompter. what is the White House going to do about that?
Well, Jesse, that's definitely what it appears to be to me. And that's why I put out a statement earlier. There was some concerning reporting over the weekend from the London Times, as you pointed out, that UN globalist staffers were basically plotting to set up the president of the United States. And first it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter, and then Katie Pavlich from Town Hall, who we offered a seat in the press pool to cover the president's historic speech today, noticed that the audio inside of the room was much lower and different for the president of the United States than the previous speaker. So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me. And I know that we have people, including the United States Secret Service, who are looking into this to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to trip up, literally trip up, the president and the first lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people. And I will personally see to it, Jesse.
Good. The president was blunt, very blunt today. It was definitely useful because these people have to get their act together. Do you think the UN heard the president loud and clear?
Absolutely. In fact, the room was absolutely packed to the walls. Every single leader showed up for President Trump's speech today, and they heard him loud and clear. And I am proud to work for President Trump every day, Jesse, but I was especially proud watching the president of the United States of America bring common sense to an organization that has made no sense for far too long. And the president gave some tough love. He said, you are all destroying your own countries, and the United States of America was just being destroyed by one of your own. He took one of your own, a globalist in Joe Biden, who had no idea what he was doing. The president took a sledgehammer to the failing globalist world order. He talked about how all of these countries need to have pride in themselves like we do here in the United States of America. They should be proud of their own heritage and culture. And Japan is beautiful, and Italy is beautiful, and the UK is beautiful because they all have their own unique history and culture and heritage, and they need to protect that just like we are doing here in the United States of America. And how do you protect yourself? How do you make sure that you are a sovereign state, not just being a decaying nation state because of the globalist world order? You have strong borders and a robust domestic energy production and law and order within your own country. Those are all things the president is obviously doing here. And it was so great to see him just speak truth to power in front of the entire world today in New York City.
And he called Putin a paper tiger. Was there anything that kind of helped him shift that position? Because that is a big change in posture.
Well, look, President Trump has been very clear that he's been increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war for a very long time. But most recently, he's been incredibly frustrated with President Putin and Russia, who continue to talk nice. But then we wake up every morning and in the West Wing, we're receiving reports about how Russia bombed Ukraine and they continue to kill innocent civilians. And the president is making it very clear that Russia is in a very weak position. And he's absolutely right. They are a massive country with a massive military. They are a war economy. But it's been 3.5 years. And look at how Ukraine has been able to defend itself. And so the president has said that we are going to continue selling weapons to NATO, and NATO and Ukraine can choose how to use those weapons. But the way that this weapon arrangement has now taken place under President Trump is putting America first, because we are selling these weapons to Ukraine and to NATO, and NATO is backfilling those weapons to Ukraine. So the American taxpayer is benefiting from this. That's a change and a shift in position from the Biden administration. But the president has said if Vladimir Putin wants to keep fighting, well, the president knows how to fight. But ultimately, always, Jesse, the president has wanted peace. He's wanted this war to come to an end, and he's made that very clear since he came into office in January.
All right, Caroline, thank you very much. And let me know when you get the names of these saboteurs of the UN. I'd like to send Johnny after them. We appreciate it.
Oh, I will. Thanks, Jesse.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.